In 1933, Germany carried out a national census. It asked ordinary questions: name, address, religion. One question mattered more than the rest. Were you Jewish? Many answered honestly. Why wouldn't they? The census was run by the state. It looked administrative, routine. The forms were processed by statisticians, not soldiers. One of them was Richard Korher, trained economist. Another was Wilhelm Winkler, a census expert. They did not arrest anyone. They did not carry weapons. They organized data. Within years, that data was handed to the Nazi regime. Population registers were merged with church records and local files. By the time deportations began, officials didn't need informants. They had addresses. In Amsterdam, census records allowed Nazi authorities to locate Jewish families with such efficiency that over 70% of Dutch Jews were deported, one of the highest rates in Western Europe. Families who had lived in the same homes for generations were found not by spies, but by paperwork. Many never returned. Now move to Rwanda, decades later. In the 1930s, Belgian colonial authorities conducted a census. They classified people as Hutu, Tutsi, or Tua. Before this, those identities were fluid based on class, cattle ownership, marriage. The census froze them. Identity cards were issued. Ethnicity was printed and stamped. A farmer named Jean-Pierre could no longer change his status. A family could no longer blend into another group. In 1994, during the genocide, roadblocks appeared across the country. Militiamen didn't argue. They didn't debate. They checked identity cards. If Tutsi was printed, the outcome was immediate. Entire families were killed because of a word assigned decades earlier by a colonial census. The cards had outlived the empire that created them. The people most trapped by these censuses weren't politicians. They were teachers, shopkeepers, clerks, children, people who had complied because compliance was normal. After the violence, the records remain. In Germany, census files were studied to understand how efficiently death had been administered. In Rwanda, ethnic identification was officially banned because the state recognized what the data had done. But the damage could not be undone. A census did not create hatred. It made hatred searchable. It turned neighbors into entries, lives into columns, death into a logistical task. And the final outcome? Millions dead, governments claiming neutrality, and a lesson history keeps relearning. In the Netherlands, one family, the Cohen family, had lived in Amsterdam for generations. They were ordinary shopkeepers. When the Nazis cross-checked census data with synagogue membership lists, every Cohen household was accounted for. Herman Cohen, his wife, and their 2 children were arrested in 1942 and deported to Westerbork transit camp. None survived the war. A single answer on a census decades before had made their survival impossible. Similarly, in Rwanda, the family of Jean-Pierre Mukamana, a Tutsi farmer in Butare province, had once lived in a community where intermarriage blurred ethnic lines. Jean-Pierre's grandfather had never owned much cattle and had been considered Hutu socially, but the Belgian colonial census of the 1930s had rigidly classified his lineage as Tutsi. 50 years later, during the 1994 genocide, this card determined his fate. Militiamen stopped at his farm, demanded identification, and in minutes, he and his family were executed. Those cards, dusty and official, had outlived colonial authority, yet dictated life and death. The irony is brutal. Many of those creating and managing the census never intended these outcomes. Korher in Germany, Belgian colonial officers. In Rwanda, they were bureaucrats. They treated the census as neutral, routine work. But neutrality is a dangerous illusion. When power shifts, systems designed to know populations can become instruments of oppression. The very act of organizing humanity into boxes gave later authorities the ability to act with chilling efficiency. The consequences rippled decades later. In Germany, historians and ethicists still study census files to understand the mechanics of the Holocaust. In Rwanda, the government has abolished ethnic identity on IDs. Children today are legally just Rwandan, yet even now, communities bear the scars. Families that survived the genocide live with trauma. Neighborly trust has been forever altered. The census did not just kill individuals, it fractured societies. And it wasn't just Germany and Rwanda. Across the world, censuses have been used as instruments of control. In the Ottoman Empire, the Armenian population was counted, tracked, and eventually targeted during deportations and massacres. In Stalinist Ukraine, population records were used to identify kulaks during forced collectivization. Anywhere the state can define identity, it can weaponize it. The human lesson is clear, though bitter. Paperwork can be lethal. Compliance, honesty, and neutrality, virtues in normal life, can become deadly when used by an oppressive system. Lives are turned into entries, and death becomes efficient. Ordinary people, obeying ordinary rules, may find themselves trapped decades later by decisions they never consented to. So the next time a census arrives at your door, consider this. It is not just a collection of numbers. It is a record of who you are in the eyes of power, and power, as history has shown, is rarely neutral.